differently than they do see.
Yeah. Many times I've found people, and I've tried to fight the urge in me as well, when they see something in front of them, they only see the negative, and even though the positive is coming toward them, they won't embrace the positive. They'll only dwell on the negative.
When I go to speak to people, I have a very simple test that I give them. I take a white piece of paper and I put a big dot in the center. The reason I make a big dot in the center because many times they're too far away. And then I show it and I give it to everybody in the room. I said, I don't want you to discuss what you just saw, just keep it to yourself and we'll get back to it later. And then later on I'll tell people, I ask people, what did you see?
Mm.
What do you think they saw? A dot.
Yeah.
They never saw the sheet of paper.
Right.
Everybody just saw the dot.
Yeah.
And when I say to them, did anybody see that white sheet of paper that was hundreds of times bigger than the dot?
Yes.
People just looked.
Yeah.
They didn't.
Right.
So when you wake up in the morning and you look a little toe and your foot hurts, you think it's going to be a miserable day because your toe hurts. Well, why don't you look at the rest of your body and see how wonderful the rest of your body feels?
Right.
You won't feel the toe hurting.
Sure, sure. Now, you related to that, you described some of your interactions with animals. I know you love animals.
Oh, I love animals. Yeah.
And you sadly had to leave a dog and a cat when you left Italy.
Yeah.
But and as a child, that's heartbreaking. For anyone, it's heartbreaking. But you were, I think, a teenager.
19, I was
19. There was something you described where a woman in the small town of Ospitaletto was nursing birds. Could you describe that again?
She was a British lady, single woman, who had a beautiful, beautiful setter as a dog. And the urchins in the village, who were miserable kids, and it really wasn't their fault.
Right.
These were kids who had never had an opportunity to go to school, never had an opportunity to wear some proper clothes. They ran around without shoes. So they got their kicks out of throwing stones at the nests of the birds and have the little eggs or the baby birds come up. And this woman who used to go around and would pick up these little birds that were maybe 2 or 3 or 4 days old, and she had a clinic in her home.
Yes.
Where she nursed these birds back to health. And sometimes it worked and sometimes it didn't. I mean, she had a dropper, what do they call it, medicine droppers?
An eye dropper?
Eye droppers, yeah, that she would feed them with. I remember a couple of times that I went there, she made me hold the bird wrapped up in a little piece of like a handkerchief and feed him. And I remember that incident that I mentioned about in the book, where one of the swallows came back the following year.
It's amazing. It's really amazing.
Yeah.
And it actually tapped on the window.
Tapped on the window, she opened the window, and she claimed, I mean, she said at the time, oh, I nursed him last year. Now, how she recognized it, I have no idea. But I know the bird went onto her shoulder and kept chirping. She caressed it, and I mean, I still see the picture in my mind's eye. And then the bird flew away and never came back. Now, the reason it probably never came back is these birds always went away for the winter season, and he probably had outlived his life. But yeah, animals are very dear to me.
And the whole thing with the bird was very profound for me. Again, I had to put down the book and think about it. I know tears came to my eyes when I read that. It's very, very inspiring. One of the more poignant things, seeing the little boy describe this and empathizing with you as a little boy, was that you felt like one of those birds in a way that if it were not for this gentle person, you know, society would just crush you, and the people who were confined there were like these birds. Maybe you'd live, maybe you wouldn't live. And there was a lot of vulnerability.
Could be, yeah.
That, well, that, I guess that's how I read it. I don't mean to, you know, indicate to you what you felt, of course. Was she also a confined person?
Yeah.
An intern?
Mhm,
Okay.
yeah, she was British, and that
Yeah.
was confined because of that.
Now,
Dangerous individual.
for what reason we have no idea.
Uh,
I I, I find the situation where you have all these disparate people. One person is an Oxford educated professor
right. Yeah.
in the town.
He was a
and
professor at Oxford.
he was a professor at Oxford, being confined there. From what I could gather, mostly because the British thought since he's Italian, he has to be expelled from the
Right.
country.
And the Italians thought he was British because he was teaching in Oxford. So
And you were able to have him as a tutor at one
I had
point.
him as a tutor for English. Yes.
Yeah. So did you learn most of your English from that point on, or had you been learning it earlier?
No, I would say probably from that point on.
Okay.
I mean, it was limited, and I studied an English in school, which is always very limited. But I studied
Yeah.
the grammar, which
Yeah.
helped me a lot.
Yeah.
And I guess to some extent, my grammar in English is probably better than a lot of
Yeah.
people who went to school here.
Sure. I guess going back, I don't want to make this, you know, put meaning into this that's not there. I don't want to do that. But I guess with any piece of work, anybody's life story, different people who read it, just like you were saying, are going to see different things. And
Excuse me for interrupting
yes.
you. I disagree with you. And now the reason I disagree
Yeah.
is because of the proof that I've gotten from dozens and dozens of people, both in the written word and by word of mouth, how they all felt the same way about the book.
Very interesting.
It's a book of hope,
Yes.
okay? I didn't make that up.
Right.
I didn't write that this is a book of hope.
Right.
In fact, hopefully it will come out with another book. And rather than saying it's a memory of a childhood memory of it, I want it to be it's a book of
Yes.
love and hope.
Mm-hmm.
It has a lot of love in it.
Mm-hmm.
The experiences that you have just indicated, maybe the people didn't talk to me about the bird,
Mm-hmm.
or about how I feel about animals, but a lot of the things that you have mentioned, without belaboring the point, I was given by many people.
Yeah. Well, I guess the nuance I'm about to talk about is something I've been hashing out in my mind for a while, and this was one more illustration of it, is the concept of being the quote-unquote other in a society, the quote-unquote outsider, which I think is the struggle of any society that wants to be just and democratic. When do we stop treating people like the other? Your